Hey guys, it's Charlie again with MetalWorks with an update on our 60 Cadillac build. The main part of this video is just showing you guys how to get the body to fit down onto the new Roadster Shop chassis. So let's jump on in it and let you guys see what that process all entails. Alright guys, we're running into a little bit of interference issues with the Roadster Shop chassis. So Nick's going to have to do a little bit of cutting here, but he'll explain to us quick what he's going to do before he starts that.
So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a cut here and a cut here. I'm going to drill these spot welds out, which I already did, so that these are loose. Makes the cut a little easier. And then I'll be able to set the whole car down without it interfering with the core support. Once I have the rest of the car set, I will section this center piece of the original core support here, and then I will have to make a transition piece that steps up and reattach it.
Alright, good deal. Alright guys, one more thing just to point out. The first thing we did was line up this center hole in the bottom of the core support to the hole in the chassis, and that seems to throw all the body mount points off. But if you were to line the wheel wells up and the wheel well properly, it lines up everything else on the car, and just this hole is off. So just to clarify on that. Alright, you can see Nick has done some initial cutting of the floor to clearance the chassis. But then he started dropping the body down, and he's finding that he's going to have to take more off from the core support, as it's already going to hit the chassis here. So I'm not entirely sure how much more is going to have to come off, but we'll find out shortly. So it was easier for Nick just to pull the inner fenders out to address the core support here. So he's got that trimmed up more now. So the next phase here is probably going to be the transmission tunnel, because that's going to need some clearance. Alright, things are getting serious now. So Nick will most likely have to cut out more, but he's just taking it a little at a time. So he's got those notched out for the frame rails. And now he's moving on to the transmission tunnel. So you can see that little mark right there where it's hitting and further back. So he's probably going to take it up into this point, and he knows he'll get into the cross member. But again, rather cut too little than cut too much. So alright, you can see where Nick cut open the transmission tunnel. So with the cuts to allow the frame through part of the floor and the modifications to the cross member, those four things are allowing the car to sit down on the chassis.
Not on the chassis,
down. Now Nick has to test it for drive shaft to see what kind of mods that's going to take. And Nick's been working on getting the core support reshaped to work around the chassis here. Just the beginning stages of that.
Somebody's trimming again.
So Nick is currently working on the inner fenders and splash pans to get them to clearance the chassis. For example, you can see that this area is going to hit, so he's going to cut out this chunk here and then move it to the right to keep that factory line, but to get it to clear the chassis components. Still undetermined if we're going to need to cut this piece back, considering where it sits in relationship to the chassis, as the Cadillac will no longer be on air ride but will be static lowered all the time. So he's been still manipulating the front core support. He'll be building a few filler panels in these areas. And again, working on the inner fenders, trying to only clearance where we have to, and then replacing components to keep a nice kind of factory style to the inner fender and the splash pans. There you can see Nick's got the inner fender opened up on this side to clearance the chassis. He's got all the splash pans modified. All right, Nick's got the driver's side inner fender modified to clear the frame. Now he's going to work on these brackets here to attach them to the frame. Then the next step again will be trying to figure out how to trim these panels as they hang down further than the frame, and the car will be no longer on air ride but static lowered. So that's the next step. So it doesn't appear there's any provisions really for mounting the rear bumper on the Roadster Shop chassis, so we're gonna have to do some modifying here for these mount points on the bumper.
So yeah, I was looking at the picture. There's
All right, you can see Nick working on the provisions for mounting the rear bumper. And unfortunately, right where one of the provisions needs to be is right where the cool Roadster Shop logo was. So we had to fill that in. see the bumper is mounted with the new provisions. So Nick's working on a bumper bracket for the side of the frame here. You see the side bumper mount now. Nick's got the front bumper on the Cadillac. That one bolted up just fine to the Roadster Shop chassis. Nick's getting ready to make a spacer for the master cylinder on the Cadillac. Put the old bridge port to good use. Alright, Nick's got the master cylinder mocked up with his adapter plate that he made. So it's Tony working on the stock steering column shaft so that we can reuse it again. There you can see the original steering column. We'll be able to use the shaft now with a steering knuckle. So Nick is building a panel to cover up this hole. There's his template. So he's over making the one out of metal now. So here's the vintage airbox that will be going in the Cadillac. Nick will be working on mounting it up into this cavity in the dash. Then he's also building a plate to cover up that opening and to route the hoses through. There you can see the vintage airbox is mocked up in place. He's got the side panel in that will run the hoses through. So Nick's been working on the heater hoses for the vintage air unit. So he's got this panel made for inside the Cadillac. Now he's working on routing the lines through the inner fenders. And they'll go up and around and then inside the body through this other plate that he just made. Alright guys, that's where things stand on the Cadillac build. Check back in soon, we'll have more videos on the way. Take care.